In 2025, the European Union, EU, finds itself in the midst of a severe energy crisis driven by a confluence of geopolitical, economic, and regulatory challenges. The situation has been further complicated by the ongoing tensions surrounding natural gas supplies. Qatar, a key supplier of liquefied natural gas, LNG, has issued a warning that it may suspend gas shipments to the EU in response to the bloc's newly introduced corporate sustainability due diligence directive. This regulation demands that major firms scrutinize their supply chains for human rights violations and environmental damage, with penalties for non-compliance potentially reaching up to 5% of global turnover. Qatar's energy minister, Saad Al-Kaabi, emphasized that such sanctions would lead to intolerable financial losses for the country, which could have severe ramifications for its energy sector and national income. This threat comes at a critical time when the EU is working to diversify its energy sources in the aftermath of reducing reliance on Russian natural gas due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. At the same time, the halt of Russian gas shipments via Ukraine, effective as of the beginning of January 2025, has left many EU nations scrambling to find alternative sources of energy. The agreement that allowed the transit of Russian gas through Ukraine expired without renewal, leaving behind a gap in energy supply that has had far-reaching consequences. The absence of this vital pipeline, which has been a key energy artery for the EU for decades, has sent shockwaves through European markets. Benchmark gas prices soared to their highest levels in over a year as the continent faces the grim reality of dwindling reserves and soaring import costs. The cessation of this gas flow is particularly challenging for countries in Central Europe, such as Slovakia, which are heavily reliant on Russian gas. Slovakia's main energy provider, Slovenský plynárenský priemysel (SPP), estimates it will incur an additional €90 million, approximately $93 million, annually to secure alternative gas supplies. While the EU has been working to mitigate its reliance on Russian energy supplies by sourcing LNG from the US, Qatar, and other regions, this strategy is far from seamless. US President-elect Donald Trump has ramped up pressure on the EU, threatening punitive tariffs unless European nations significantly increase their LNG imports from the United States. Trump's warning underscores his broader strategy of narrowing the US trade deficit and bolstering the country's energy export sector. While the EU has already ramped up LNG imports from the US in recent years, these imports are subject to volatile pricing and market competition. As of the first half of 2024, the US accounted for nearly 48% of the EU's LNG imports, and the situation is likely to intensify as Europe seeks to meet its energy demands amid geopolitical tensions and supply uncertainties. These developments have amplified existing political and economic fractures within the EU. The European Commission, under President Ursula von der Leyen, has promised to phase out Russian fossil fuels by 2027, but this commitment clashes with the realities of energy security. Many countries, especially those in Eastern and Central Europe, are resistant to such a rapid shift away from Russian energy. Slovakia, in particular, has become a vocal proponent of maintaining gas flows through Ukraine, even going so far as to engage in discussions with Russian officials to explore potential solutions. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has taken a tough stance, warning that Slovakia could resort to retaliatory measures, including halting emergency power supplies to Ukraine, if Kyiv does not agree to restore the gas transit route. Fico's statements have been polarizing, with some accusing him of being overly harsh, but he has insisted that Ukraine's actions have had a severe impact on Slovakia's energy stability and economic competitiveness. The expiration of the Russian gas deal, coupled with the EU's growing tension with Qatar over the corporate sustainability directive, highlights a broader issue facing the bloc: the need to balance energy security with environmental and human rights goals. While the EU's green transition aims to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, its immediate energy needs remain tied to fossil fuels. The push to meet sustainability targets may inadvertently alienate critical energy suppliers like Qatar, further complicating the EU's efforts to stabilize its energy market. Qatar's LNG is increasingly important for Europe, and any disruption to this supply could exacerbate an already precarious situation. Russia's role in the global energy market has also undergone a significant transformation. Since the imposition of sanctions by the EU and its allies, Russia has redirected its energy exports to countries in the BRICS bloc and other Asian markets. By 2023, China and India together accounted for 78% of Russia's crude oil exports, a dramatic increase from just 32% in 2021. This shift has lessened the economic impact of European sanctions on Russia, as it found new buyers for its energy exports. The EU's efforts to reduce its dependence on Russian energy have had mixed results. Despite the withdrawal of Russian gas, Russia has successfully rerouted energy exports to new markets, such as India, which has become one of Europe's largest distributors of refined oil products. Furthermore, Russia's strategy of forming stronger partnerships with countries like Saudi Arabia has had global implications for the oil market. Saudi Arabia, traditionally a major oil exporter, has increased its purchases of Russian fuel oil and vacuum gas oil, VGO, particularly in response to a spike in domestic energy consumption during a record hot summer. In November 2024, Saudi Arabia emerged as the largest buyer of Russian seaborne fuel oil, underscoring the growing energy partnership between the two nations. This shift has significant ramifications for global oil markets, as Saudi Arabia's energy policy can influence oil pricing strategies and production levels across the globe. The expiration of the gas transit deal through Ukraine and the growing friction with Qatar are not the only challenges facing the EU. Rising energy prices are putting additional strain on the European economy. The EU's dependence on alternative sources of energy, such as LNG, is increasing, but these alternatives come at a higher cost and are subject to volatile market fluctuations. Countries like Slovakia and Hungary, which have historically depended on Russian gas, are now facing higher import bills and potential public discontent as they seek more expensive substitutes. These rising costs are expected to affect European consumers directly, increasing home utility bills and dampening disposable income. In energy-intensive sectors, operational costs are also rising, potentially driving up prices for goods and services. This complex energy crisis is compounded by political and trade tensions, especially with the United States. Trump's ultimatum for the EU to purchase more American LNG or face tariffs further complicates the EU's energy strategy. While European leaders have expressed a willingness to engage with the US on energy cooperation, the threat of tariffs looms large, potentially disrupting existing supply chains and driving up costs for European importers. The EU's leadership is caught between its long-standing commitment to sustainability, its geopolitical concerns, and the practical necessity of securing affordable energy for its citizens and industries. As energy prices rise, inflationary pressures are expected to intensify, further weighing on the EU's economic growth. Countries within the bloc are facing a difficult balancing act, maintaining economic stability while pursuing ambitious environmental goals. In the face of mounting pressure from both domestic and international forces, EU policymakers must find ways to secure a steady energy supply, negotiate favorable trade terms, and ensure that their long-term green transition does not undermine their immediate economic needs. The EU's energy dilemma in 2025 represents a confluence of competing interests, environmental goals, energy security, economic stability, and geopolitical considerations. The decisions made in the coming months and years will have profound implications for the EU's future, both in terms of its energy security and its role in the global geopolitical landscape. The delicate balance between securing reliable energy supplies, navigating complex international relationships, and addressing domestic economic pressures will be one of the most pressing challenges facing European leaders in the years ahead.